Hello, and welcome back to the ongoing adventures of Mr. Adelman's fantastic geometry class. So, you may have noticed the audio quality is slightly better. I'm now wearing a microphone, and so I can both present the material and dance at the same time. So I will be dancing throughout this entire lesson. Feel free to join me at home. All right. We have two things we're going to go over today. The first is supplementary angles. We're going to prove that vertical angles are congruent because of supplementary angles. So let's get started. The second thing we'll do is we're going to talk about some vertical angles. All right, so first things first. What we are given is that angles 1 and 2 are a linear pair, and angles 2 and 3 are a linear pair. And what they're asking us to prove is what we already know, is that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent angles. So first thing we're going to do in our proof, of course, is write down what's already given to us. Angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair. Angle 2 and angle 3 are a linear pair. And the reason, of course, is that this is given directly to us. All right, our second step is that we know that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. And we also know that angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary. And why do we know this? Because of the supplement theorem, which, by the way, is on page 108 of your textbook. And it says that if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary angles. And so that's how we get from these being linear pairs to these being supplementary angles. And then we get to 3. And we're going to make a big jump. We know that angle 1 is supplementary to angle 2, and angle 2 is supplementary to angle 3. So we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And why are we allowed to say this? Well, if you look in your book on page 109 and you look at theorem 2.6, it says angles supplementary to the same angle or to congruent angles are congruent. So I'm going to write that down in an abbreviated version. It's going to say that angles supplementary to the same angle or to congruent angles are congruent themselves. And like I said, this is on page 109, and this is theorem 2.6. You can look that up at your leisure. So we have, in just 3 steps, we have proven that these vertical angles are in fact congruent. All right, we're going to continue on with some vertical angles. I'm not going to do a formal proof for this one. We're just going to sort of solve it. We're going to talk about vertical angles. Our example here says that if angle 5 and this should be angle 6, are vertical angles, and the measure of angle 5 is x, and the measure of angle 6 is 200 minus 3x, then find the measure of 5 and the measure of angle 6. All right. Well, we know a couple things about vertical angles. We were just proven up above that vertical angles are congruent, and so we also know that, well, let's just start there. Let's start with these vertical angles being congruent. So we know that angle 5 is congruent to angle 6. And why do we know this? We just proved this. This is the vertical angle theorem. Alright, so what do we know about vertical angles? Oh, I'm sorry, what do we know about congruent angles? Well, we know that congruent angles have the same measure. So the measure of angle 5 equals the measure of angle 6, and we know this because it's the definition of congruent angles. Alright, and because the measure of angle 5, we know that it's up right here, it's x. And we also happen to know the measure of angle 6, which is 200 minus 3x. So how were we able to do that? Well, of course, the lovely substitution property. And so now what we can do here is we can just solve for x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3x to both sides. When I add 3x to both sides, I get over here, I get 4x equals 200. This is the addition property. Okay. Meaning I added 3x. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by 4. And so I divide 4x by 4, I get x. I divide 200 by 4, and I get 50. That's the division property. Divide by 4. And now that I have x, I can just plug it right back into our original. So our original was that the measure of angle 5 equaled x, and I know that x is 50. Well, I also know that the measure of angle 5 equaled the measure of angle 6. So angle 6 also equals 50. Did you see any of that? Of course not. Let me re-go over that. Alright, so we found x by dividing both sides by 4. I know that the measure of angle 5 equals x, so the measure of angle 5 equals 50. And the measure of angle 5 equals the measure of angle 6, so both measure of angle 5 and the measure of angle 6 both equal 50. Well, that is all for today's fantastic geometry class. I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as I did. Why don't you have the best night you've ever had in your whole entire lives. Goodbye.